Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, dear colleagues. Today we have a great pleasure to have the webinar roundtable discussion, which is organized by Siauliai University Researchers team, as well as by Researchers Excellence Network. It's a great pleasure to have today some presentations about very important issue in nowadays policy, economics, and regional development of European Union states. So today we are going to discuss the issue: does EU's regional support achieved its objectives, and what are directions for improving cohesion policy? Today we have a pleasure to have three researchers by Siauliai University, and the Associated Professor Kristina Matuzevičiūtė is going to give you a presentation about this issue to present the main insights from the research. As well, we have the pleasure and great honor to have Asta Avietė, Program Assistant, European Commission from Belgium. And today we have Professor Uroš Pinterič, Research Counselor Jean Monnet Chair, Alexander Dubček, University in Trenčín. So good morning, dear participants, dear listeners. Please be very active. If you have any questions for our presenters, or you would like to give a feedback for our presentations, please write down some points in the chat line, or some of you have the possibility to give a speech. So please be active, and I wish you a great pleasure. So Associated Professor Kristina Matuzevičiūtė is going to start this meeting, webinar, and roundtable discussion. Thank you, Kristina, for being here.
Good morning, everyone. And today it's a great pleasure to give the results of our research, which lasted for 3 years. And with this event today, we are closing a project. I believe, or I hope, that we will continue our research on that issue after some holiday, maybe on that question, because it took for us 3 years of analysis of that issue, participating in different conferences, in ERSA Congress as well, every year when we started our project and our research. It's quite difficult to fit into 15 minutes for the 3 years work, but I will try. So our presentation is today about has EU regional support achieved its objectives, and what are the directions for improving cohesion policy, and relevancy on that issue is widely debated in recent years, and the redistribution of the funds becomes very important, especially during nowadays situation what we have with the COVID outbreak, and as well as the budget of European Union will decrease because of the Brexit, because United Kingdom is exiting European Union. So it is very important to determine whether the previous funding has achieved its intended objectives, and also to identify what future directions could be, and what we can learn from previous programming periods. So concluding our research problem, we saw, analyzing previous studies, that research mostly analyzed the linear impact of regional support, And what we have noticed also that results of previous research vary, and authors are using different approaches and different methods of investigation, and they are covering different periods of the research and as well different disaggregation level of analysis. So what we have done, we analyzed two periods, two programming periods, 2000, 2006, 2007, 2013. We couldn't analyze the last period because the data was published only last week about the last period for 2014 and 2020. Also, we covered all European Union countries, and we analyzed the regional support combined, and also we analyzed regional support distinguishing different projects. So what are our main conclusions? So what we have discovered that the assessment of European Union regional support is usually made at NUTS 2 level. But what we have noticed with our research that the main problems occur at NUTS 3 or smaller territorial units. And we noticed that the regional support is focused on NUTS 2 regions, but we have a problem, especially in smaller territorial units, and this also raises the question about the efficiency of European Union's regional support. And because we saw that regional support focusing on bigger NUTS 2 regions do not guarantee the success at smaller units. But what we saw already for the next programming period, taking for example Lithuania, we will be divided in two regions, Vilnius region and the rest of Lithuania, hoping that this will help to reduce disparities, regional disparities in other regions. Also, we saw that impact of regional support on economic and productivity growth was more successful during the period of 2007-2013, despite that this was the period of financial crisis, of debt crisis in European and especially Eurozone countries. And we think that that more considerable attention was devoted to performance management, using means of evaluation, monitoring performance and expenditure reserve to increase the efficiency of European Union funds, and also to integrate these funds into national economic and financial systems, and that determined the higher success during the previous period of 2000-2013. Also, our conclusion is that the return over the period of support is estimated higher because the support is included in GDP as expenditure, but the return is much lower if we take a longer period, and that could be the conclusion that transfers tend to display immediate effects, but they do not show, and the immediate effects are higher, and also that sometimes regions are losing the status of Objective 1 support regions. So also there is no longer perspective of continuing projects, especially in these regions which sometimes become dependent on European support. Also, what we can conclude that our estimations show that cohesion policy contributed to diminishing disparities among the regions in terms of the development level and productivity, and relationship between funding intensity and effect on disparities is non-linear, as I mentioned in the beginning, suggesting that not in all regions and not all support had a positive effect. And this table here shows the turning points of cohesion policy transfer intensity, and the marginal effect of the intensity above this point becomes diminishing and becomes negative. So planning future support, it is needed to take into account which regions previously were overfunded. And we have noticed that over period 2000-2006, mostly overfunded dominate periods in Portugal and Greece. And over previous financing period, there were regions in Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Portugal, and Greece as well. Also, the next conclusion we made, it is that the effect of regional support varies depending on the areas which European Union regional support is targeted. And we found that only RDF Objective 2 regions contributed positive convergence among NUTS 3 regions. Also, we saw that the positive effect is when basic infrastructure and productive environment is supported. And what we also noticed, and what was quite interesting conclusion, that human resources, the funding for human resources was insignificant. And we concluded that these findings are in line with the economic geography theory, which emphasizes the importance of infrastructure and competition, and also positive impact on productivity and growth. And also one of the main, our conclusion and one of the main areas of our research was to find the answer to the question, what determines the heterogeneous impact of cohesion policy in different regions, and we made a conclusion that institutional environment, institutional quality becomes a crucial factor in shaping and moderating the cohesion policy impact in different regions. So we see that institutional environment are critical in transforming cohesion policy commitments to productivity growth compared to GDP growth, and importance increased even more during economic downturn. And moreover, the importance of institutions became bigger, especially at NUTS 3 levels. And turning to the second part of our research, the recommendations. What recommendations we could suggest? So, as I mentioned, that we have noticed that quality of institutions is one of the most important factors shaping the cohesion policy impact and support impact. So our recommendation was to improve the quality of institutions, and it has to be the priority of next programming period, reducing the corruption, increasing accountability, improving governance, where the weak institutions lead to inefficient EU regional support. And also we see that in some euro area countries and the huge decrease of economic growth was driven by worsening corruption and weakening the rule of law, and also weaker regulatory quality. And we see, I would say, threatening examples over European countries like Hungary. We could take, where voice and accountability is under pressure. And in some countries, political stability and absence of violence constitute weaknesses. For example, in Spain, and then there are like conflicts between different regions. The next recommendation, which we can state, it is that the distribution of European Union regional support should focus on the challenges at NUTS 3 level, as current strategy targeting NUTS 2 regions doesn't address the convergence issues within NUTS 2 regions, because we see that the disparities decrease between the countries and between the NUTS 2 regions, but regional support doesn't succeed the decreasing disparities between the NUTS 3 regions. Also, the third recommendation is focusing on regional support only on projects which have a long-term impact on economic and productivity growth, as well as convergence. As I mentioned, because the short term it gives a huge impact, but for a longer period, the impact is decreasing. And as well, also what is important, as we noticed, that exceeding the maximum positive regional level of regional support intensity gives the situation that too much regions are overfunded, and but the regional support doesn't ensure the regional convergence in these regions in many cases. So there is a need of reallocation of structural funds, maybe even more financing the more developed regions with higher institutional quality, or introducing new criteria like unemployment, maybe innovations, which could be the sign of objective one targeted region, because now it's only one indicator which is taken into account. It's 70% of GDP per capita, the average, and sometimes the regions are very close to that criteria, and when they lose, they can't continue the projects which they started to implement during the period of financing. So that would be all of my presentation and of our results and the recommendations. for implementing for the new programming period. So I would like maybe to invite other participants to share their opinion on these questions as well. Maybe reflecting their insights for our future researches and so is there who would like to ask or to give an insight or an opinion?
Dear colleagues, you have an opportunity to ask questions about research results which were presented by Associated Professor Kristina. Don't forget that you have the possibility to discuss actively. So if you have any insights or questions or a feedback, do not hesitate to raise a hand on Teams program, which will show us moderators that you would like to contribute to the discussion. So as we still have some participants with active discussant rights, Olga Sich from Ivan Franko National University. Maybe Olga would like to give a feedback about this presentation or to discuss some problematic issues which we have mentioned. As well, we have very active participant Gianluigi Coppola from University of Salerno. So you may add some insights as well. So please be brave, be active, and contribute. So I can see Olga. You are.
Hello, dear colleagues.
Hello, Olga.
Greetings from Ukraine. I'm happy to be here and your very interesting presentation to gain new experience and new knowledge about this European funding. Ukraine cannot benefit from this cohesion funds from European Union, but it's an interesting experience for us, and we want to gain new information and new knowledge about possibilities of European funding and try a new process on regional policy in our country. Thank you.
Olga, I would like to continue our discussion and ask, do you see something similar as a research results already showed during colleagues' implemented research? We see that we have disparities between regions, but the biggest disparity appears between smaller regions or municipalities or something like this. Do you have similar thing in Ukraine?
Yes, of course, we have a similar situation. And for example, I am from western part of Ukraine. We have a different situation in post-industrial cities, and we have a weak situation in rural territories, for example, in Carpathian region. So we have lots of disparity between big cities that are centers of regions, for example, Lviv or Kyiv, but we have problems with small functionalities where we have just one kind of activity, industrial activity, and we need to revitalize those territories. So we expect to have some kind of support from European Union, from funding and to revitalize those territories.
Thank you, Olga, for your feedback and as well for sharing your experience in Ukraine. And I would like to ask maybe some other participants would like to add. Maybe we have a colleague from University of Salerno. Yes, we have. Good morning.
Good morning to everybody. It's a really interesting presentation. The results are very interesting. Now, I want to know. I want to make a question. I want to make you a question. What is the change for implementing European cohesion policy, European cohesion policy for taking account the region NATS 3 instead of the region NATS 2. What is to change in your opinion? I don't know if you understand if you understand me.
Yes. So as we could get your idea, we are talking about your research result that cohesion policy support for NUTS 2 is effective. And in the case of NUTS 3, we have disparities. So what would change if we would use support for NUTS 3? If we got your question right, colleague.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much.
So, Christina, could you share your insights, please?
So, I think that I can take the example of Lithuania. We have a capital city region which attracts the majority of talents, the majority of foreign direct investment as well, and also the institution quality, I think, in capital city as well is higher. So the development of that region in various aspects, productivity growth, human capital growth, and I would say that this would focus on the problems. And what also we have noticed that different regions have very different strategic priorities and development priorities. So this also has to be taken into account. And I would say that if regional policies focused on smaller territorial units, we believe that this would implement and this would increase the development of this smaller regions, because now in many cases they don't have their own resources to increase the development. And European Union funding is like an external resource which could be like an initial, maybe in some cases, support and initial motive to implement different projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question. I hope that you will contribute later to next presentations with your questions. So if you let me, we could go forward to the next presentation as our time is going. So dear colleagues, I would like to present you Asta Vieta, Program Assistant of European Commission in Belgium. And the presentation which is going to be done is about 2021-2027 EU programming period, directions and priorities. So dear Asta, the floor is yours. We hope that you will give us very important and significant directions for the next financial period. Dear Asta, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear and see me now well. Thank you for inviting me to be in such an interesting company. To be honest, quite in our routine, we are more like, how to say, bureaucratic environment. So it's very nice to be in the fresh, surrounded by more interesting people from academia, which is always very useful to hear and to discuss. And also taking this opportunity, I want to thank the presenter, Christina. It was a very interesting presentation, really very useful insights I heard. And if I may, I will start also a little bit reacting to her one of the thirds, for example, allocating and programming at the NUTS 3 level, the cohesion policy. Yeah, it's an interesting idea, but I just, when I look from a perspective of the implementation, working with the member states, with Lithuania, for example, I would think that it would be quite burdensome for the managing authority to program and to implement at smaller territorial units. As you know, so far, Lithuania was not one region, the whole country. And only like 2 years ago, the Lithuania was divided into two NUTS 2 regions. And now when we discuss with Lithuania about future post-2020 program and priorities, we already noticed that it was quite a challenge for Lithuania to think of different challenges and different policy responses at NUTS and at 2 level regions. Well, so at NUTS 3, it would be quite very, very big challenge, but probably I will come back to this later, and then I will try now to share my presentation. Yeah, so these are the main points that I would like to present and to discuss with you. I will start first of all with post-2020 cohesion policy, a little bit overlooking the general EU priorities, setup, thematic concentration requirements. Then as an illustration, as an illustrative example, I would like to take Lithuania, that I'm working with the Lithuanian Managing Authority intensively, and then also touching a little bit the most recent challenges caused by Corona crisis, and to present a little bit how Commission tried to react quickly as much as possible to this crisis, because it also affects our post-2020 cohesion policy already. Yes, so this probably will not be something very new. In 2018, quite a long already time ago, Commission presented the whole set of proposals for the future cohesion policy. So I will just briefly would like to highlight that now it's 7 regulations. It became as one, so it's quite a big simplification and modernization in the looking at the future. Commission still kept in the proposals specific objectives for Regional Development Fund and Cohesion Fund, and ESF, European Social Fund Plus regulation. Also here, it compacted many previous regulations into one, expanded the scope to make it more friendly user for the countries. Yeah, and coming specifically on Regional Development Fund and Cohesion Fund and ESF Plus, I would say the main funds for the cohesion policy. So based on common challenges of the European Union, more namely digital, Green Deal. So of course, these main challenges were reflected in the priorities of the Regional Development Fund and Cohesion Fund regulations. So that's why we have very strong emphasis on smart, low carbon and inclusive growth. What was new that preparation for cohesion policy was linked to the European semester. I'm not sure how much you know about it, but it's an instrument of the European Union for fiscal and economic coordination. So before presenting the policy proposals, European Commission made an extensive analysis on the European semester instrument to find out what are the main challenges of every member state that it would be most efficient to address by the cohesion policy priorities. Some flexibility in the architecture that in 2024 we will all have midterm review of the programs, and then we can look what was efficient, what could be changed in order to achieve better the objectives and targets of the programs. And some modifications were introduced for simpler and faster programming, implementation, accountability, but this is, I think, more relevant for the managing authorities, so I will not elaborate much here. Yeah, and if on 2014-20 programming we had 11 thematic objectives, so now we have, as you know, 5 wide objectives. So first of all, it's Smart Europe, which cover innovation, digitalization, SMEs, entrepreneurship. Then the second priority is about green and low carbon Europe. So it's resource efficiency, energy efficiency, more connected Europe, that we would be more mobile and have good access to digital technologies, no isolated countries in terms of transport accessibility by any means of transport. And of course, in order to implement European Pillar of Social Rights, very, how to say, a Bible for social policy of the European Union, dedicated priority 4 is more social Europe. And what is very completely new, and I think very related to your topic of today, is completely new and dedicated for regional disparities priority, which is called Europe Closer to Citizens. We didn't have this priority in the current period. So this priority should target any territory of the country which needs support and funding as according to the country the most needed. It has no any thematic, it's full flexible according to thematics. So it means that funding activities could be from any area, like what I mentioned before, like innovation or some efficiency or transport, if really the accessibility is needed to reach some local object or companies. So it's fully flexible in thematic terms. What is important that it has to be implemented using territorial instruments. It means either integrated territorial investment or community-led local initiatives. Because, and another very important condition for the new priority is that it has to be based on bottom-up approach. It means that the investment needs has to be crystallized, has to come from bottom, from the citizens and stakeholders. And they also have to be later involved in the implementation of the projects. So we think that this new policy objective is really should be very effective addressing regional disparities, if of course used efficiently and programmed efficiently. So about priorities, and now if for me, I would like more to elaborate on Lithuania. So to present you the new allocations, which are agreed after the July European Council. So after long negotiations, even overnight, Lithuania succeeded to increase overall cohesion policy allocation. So now it's 60.5 around billion euros, out of which you can see 3.4 is European Development Fund, the Regional Development Fund, Cohesion Fund is, well, 1.8 billion, and the rest is ESF plus. And as we remember, Lithuania is called, together with the Baltic states, called a success story for cohesion policy in 2014-20, meaning that our Lithuanian GDP grew very fast and reached very big progress. And Lithuania reached the group of transition countries, so thematic concentration will be applied in the next period. And it means that around 35% of allocations for will have to be dedicated to priority 1. It is Smart Europe, and altogether for priority 1 and 2, Smart and Green, has to sum up to 65% of total Lithuanian envelope. Also, there are some thematic concentrations applied for social fund, but I will skip it. Yes, as I mentioned in the beginning, talking about the European semester, that before proposing priorities for all the member states, the Commission made an extensive analysis of challenges that countries face currently. So, talking about the 5 policy objectives, according to the Commission, quite a big challenge for Lithuania is quite low innovation performance, which is below EU average, low productivity of small and medium enterprises, their integrations into global value chains is quite low, and well, quite poor innovation outcomes do not support and do not make this real kick-off to the whole economy to make it more advanced and transferring it to higher value-added economy. Energy efficiency is still quite low, and we are dependent on quite few resources, including gas using. No good accessibility in terms of rail, road, here, of course, and while finalizing trans-European network system is still quite a lot to do. And of course, the potential and benefits of previous convergence, quick convergence, is heavily concentrated in 2 areas, as already Christina mentioned, in Vilnius, well, now, and Kaunas, I would add also. It's quite a booming region. Urban-rural divide is very big. So based on these challenges, on this extensive analysis, I just added quickly, listening to Christina's presentation, that although Lithuania benefited quite a lot of cohesion policy funds in the recent years, actually disparities even increased since our accession to the European Union. As you can see, coefficient of variation of GDP from poorest to richest, and that's 3 regions, it's even bigger than before. And looking at this tendency, it doesn't look like to be better. So, well, I would say that could be conclusion, intermediate conclusion, that probably, first of all, effective overriding national regional policy is needed all over the country, also implementing EU funds and also planning the whole regional policy. So it's not only that EU funds could contribute so heavily. So, and based on the analysis that I presented, Commission offered the base of negotiation with Lithuania that according to, well, analysis, the areas where the funding should be, first of all, focused. So under PO1 Smart Europe, Commission advises Lithuania to increase number of innovative companies, strengthen both the supply and demand side for innovation, to enhance research between universities and businesses, to foster the main engine of Lithuanian economy, small medium enterprises, to help them internationalize, to move and to integrate into global value chains, of course, to promote entrepreneurship. And well, although we can praise that internet coverage is quite good, however, the usage uptake of citizens and SMEs is still quite low. So lots of improvement needs to be done in this area. Skills is a big challenge for Lithuanian economy, as we know, higher and especially ICT skills. There is always a lack of it. So funding could be directed to training, reskilling in smart specialization area. Regarding PO2, of course, further promote energy efficiency. Well, it's quite a big progress made in Lithuania with energy efficiency of residential building, but it's still not enough is done. It should be continued and also extended to public building efficiency and more efficiency in industry. Promote transition to circular economy by introducing efficient waste management and recycling, and also some challenges left in climate change adaptation. Under PO3, so as I said, to complete the railroad trans-European transport network, to develop safe traffic and transport. Of course, as all the cities and our cities suffer from traffic congestions, overcrowding, so sustainable multimodal urban mobility has to be developed. But in this place, I would like to emphasize that it has to be hand in hand with the integrated territorial development strategies. It means strategies of the regions, like Kaunas, Vilnius region, and all the 10 main NUTS 3 level regions. Under PO4, active labor market policy has to be implemented, improve in education, improve equal access to everyone, and of course, first of all, improve quality and effectiveness of education. As we know, our results of our school children of OECD research, which called PISA, it's very low, so effectiveness of school network has to be made. The similar challenges left for health sector. Still, the hospital network is not effective. It's huge, and in order to reach better outcomes in healthcare and to reach life expectancy, longer life expectancy, so investment should be promoted in healthcare services and long-term care. Yeah, and finally, the PO5, the regional disparity targeted PO5. So in this area, Lithuania has further addressed the needs of lagging behind regions, improve attractiveness of business, especially in lagging regions, with stronger links with functional urban areas. So it's not about the administrative borders, which sometimes are not important, but real links of people commuting to work, to school, to public services are more important. Okay, and just for your information, I would like to present you how we are moving with the negotiations with Lithuania. And we are in extensive dialogue already 1 year ago. We had roundtable discussions with the managing authority, with the ministries about Lithuanian priorities. We received very preliminary program draft in March this year. Quite, I would say, still quite not sufficient quality, but of course it was the first draft. We provided our comments, and recently in summer we received already improved draft, which I would say really is better quality. It's a very good base for our bilateral dialogue, and hopefully we will receive even more mature program draft in October. And also I would like to draw your attention that during the whole preparation of the program of crystallizing the priorities of Lithuania, social economic partners had to be actively involved. You can see that on the slide, for example, in summer, there was supposed to be even the third cycle of discussions with social economic partners. So maybe when I wonder how much aware, for example, you as a scientist of the university, were you involved? Have you been asked to discuss, to present your views? So it would be very interesting to hear afterwards how much you were involved in social economic discussions with the managing authority in the preparations. But yeah, so I will finish on the negotiation that hopefully it will be on time, and Lithuania will get ready with the program next year already. Yeah, but the planning started in 2018, as you remember, and this year we faced quite another unexpected challenge all over the world. And in order to react to this challenge, Commission proposed even a stronger budget and many other measures that member states could immediately address this economic and social damage brought by coronavirus. And a few details in which direction we tried to went on. So first of all, it's about money, yeah, about additional resources. So of course they were allocated, topping up the current programming periods. So in total for the whole EU, it's 55 billion. Exceptionally, this amount is not broken per region or sector. So, well, you remember, we were talking about NUTS 3 programming, but for example, in this situation, it was decided to abolish any breakage per region or sector at all. Well, in order to give the full flexibility for member states to allocate the resources where is most needed. So it's again a bit remembering your idea of NUTS 3 programming. So yeah, for coronavirus reaction, it's really not, it was not even an option, I would say. What else? Commission offered higher level of pre-financing, even 50%. So it means that this amount, half of the allocated money, will be paid very, very soon in order to provide member states full liquidity to implement the projects that they think are most needed to react to economic crisis. Yes, and the last very good, I would say, very positive thing for member states is that resources are entirely from EU budget. It means 100% EU resources and no co-financing from the member state is required. How it look a little bit in practice? I can tell you that already Lithuania today, about an hour ago, discussed the proposal which amends the operational program, and it already introduces additional priority axes according to this React EU money. So what I want to say is that Lithuania is already moving forward. They're already planning how to invest the additional allocations. And with this initiative, what are the expected outcomes? Of course, first of all, is increased capacities in healthcare, because it was the sector which required emergent help and additional support. Second, as it caused economic consequences, so of course, it was supposed to support job creation and maintain workplaces by keeping short-time working schemes and by supporting SMEs in all other needs that job places should be kept as much as possible. Second is infrastructure, which is needed for citizens, and still, even by combating to crisis, the priorities still keep on green, digital, and growth-oriented investments. It means new innovative technologies. And although the proposals were prepared on cohesion policy in 2018, as you remember, so the coronavirus crisis also caused overview of the new proposals, and in the parallel, although it's negotiated, but in parallel, the proposals were a little bit amended and revamped, that they would be more adjustable to react to such economic crisis like we had recently, or who knows, it might even come another one in the future. So it's more about additional flexibility for member states to allocate money between priorities, between regions, and more time is given to complete the current period operations. Because as you know, human resources is a problem in everywhere, even in public administration, and sometimes now, even when member states had to draft, to reprogram the allocations, of course, it required time, and completion and implementation of the current operations might, of course, be interrupted. So that's why more time is given to completion of the current period. The new specific objective under Policy 4 is introduced on culture and tourism dedicated. So I think I have covered.
Thank you, dear Asta, for your very important presentation, presenting directions for future of EU states, including Lithuania. Thank you for sharing your practical insights as well as your professional ones. And then now we would like to continue with the discussion. And at this very moment, we have some questions already from our participants. And if you will let me, I will try to read those questions orally, and you can see in the chat line as well as a participant. So one of our participants is asking if the EU would implement cohesion policy at regional NUTS 3 level, would it be not a problem? What the EU interfere in countries' internal affairs? And the second one, you mentioned that in Lithuania, low innovation performance, labor and skills shortage are growing. Education system lacks efficiency and so on. So how, at your opinion, Lithuania became a success story, showed high GDP growth and cohesion with other more developed EU countries? So dear Asta, could you share your insights, thoughts about and try to answer to our participant.
Thank you for interesting question. So I understand question one is still about the implementation at NUTS 3 level. But what I would like to say is implementation of all the investments, both EU funded or private or, well, not private, but public country investments, internal investments, they are implemented by member state. So it's up to the member state to plan, to take into account the disparities of all regions, even smallest regions. So it's pure responsibility and right of the member states to implement the investments and also to allocate them as sufficiently as possible, addressing the challenges of all the territories. That's why I especially referred to territorial instruments. They have to be more efficiently used. Again, referring to the current experience of Lithuania on implementing EU funds at regional level, we have to all admit that actually it was not very efficient and successful. Although the investment in quantity in terms of allocation money is quite generous, and I can hear that many economists of Lithuania agree with it. But the question is how efficiently and to which focuses it was directed. So, you know, we can hear that infrastructure was developed, or even in small towns, we have a lovely infrastructure, pavement, streets, lighting, roads, school buildings. At the countryside, when we go, school buildings are renovated and new. It looks nice. But what about businesses? That someone has to keep business in the town, even at school. What about the achievement of school children? If they have joint classes, we can see that in joint classes, the achievements of children are not spectacular. So again, I would like to emphasize efficient national overriding regional policy, which is the backbone of the whole success of combating regional disparities. About Lithuanian challenges in innovations and lack of skills, Commission analysis is based comparing to the data of all the member states, comparing Lithuanian data to EU averages. So comparing to EU averages, there are still challenges that I mentioned. It's innovation. But when we look at the base values of Lithuania before accession or just after accession of the European Union, so the dynamic, the tendency was appraisal. It's amazing. That's why it's called success story. So the progress was really visible, and we all can see it. But in order to move to better targets, seek for higher advantage, there is still some things to do.
Thank you, Asta. It seems that really regional development can have its strengths and weaknesses, and some challenges, problems, and some very good successful results. So thank you very much for your presentation. We hope that we will continue in our discussion after the third presentation, but now we would like to ask Professor Uroš Pinterič, who is, I would say, very good specialist of challenges in EU policy. And Professor will talk about questions of European macro regions as forced development of non-existing identities, and the importance of development aid for the preservation of rural territories. So, Professor Uroš, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I hope we hear each other. Or, yeah, good afternoon, since there is a slight time difference between the countries. So for me, it's still morning. Anyway, listening to the previous presentations, I think that the idea that I had, what I will be talking about, kind of changed. First thing that I would like to point out is that my basic interest, it's closer to, let's say, sociology or political science and much less to the European administration. So this will be maybe a bit different insight from what we are talking. Still, I will try to keep a couple of cases while speaking about the European macro regions and European regionalization based on administrative or statistical framework of development, to say so. So I was thinking about macro regions at first, but then you started with the development on the NUTS levels. And the first thing that I would like to point out in this story is that in many countries, the NUTS level, between the NUTS level 1 and NUTS, or let's say non-existing NUTS level 5, if you remember a couple of years in the history of development of the NUTS system. So today we know it as low level, so the local level or municipal level. There is lots of different systems between our countries, which are in many cases quite incomparable, and in many cases also very imaginary in the perspective how to do this, how to develop these levels and who is really responsible. So obviously, I will be speaking more of country that is closest to me, so Slovenia, even if, you know, my work affiliation is to Slovakia. But in Slovenia, we don't have any kind of institutional structure on NUTS level 2. We don't have any kind of structural, institutional structure on NUTS level 3. It's just the statistical system of division of the country. On both levels, the decision-making or policy-making structure is actually the national government with its own vision of development, with its own vision of what is appropriate, how the development priorities should be spread around the territory of the country. And even if the money is obviously divided, or better, European funding is obviously divided based on NUTS level 2 and NUTS level 3, this division is rather artificial, and it doesn't take into the account the needs of the people, to say so, or the priorities of the people, which means that the country in this situation decides how the money should be spent, what are the priorities, obviously those which are supported by the European documents, European strategies. And in this perspective, we can get into the projects which don't have long-term results in boosting the development of certain territories. And in this perspective, we can see that, yes, there is a short-term effect, or we have the output, but is there any kind of outcome? Just to be very, very local, so the last case of this kind of European Union financing, or if you want, cohesion policy financing of certain let's say, development possibility or need of the country on the local level here at the place where I actually live is to pay, let's say, less than €500,000 for some kind of structure on the road in order to reduce the flooding risk of the river which passes through the area and obviously affects the agriculture system of this particular locality. This money was used, it was European money, and what it really happened is that the road, which is necessary for the tractors or the agriculture machinery passing through the territory, got narrowed instead of broadened because of whatever kind of limitations. The second thing is the structure which should turn the water to avoid the road will actually get blocked over the territory, and within few years, if nobody will be maintaining it, instead of reducing the risk of floods, it will create the problem to flood the fertile land and take it away with the erosion of the territory over the time. So this is kind of situation when somebody, in this case European Union, provides the possibility for the development, and then on the state level the plan, it might be confirmed, but at the state level nobody really understands the particular locality or how the particular locality works. The municipality which actually attracted the money for through the grant for this kind of let's say improvement doesn't really understand the behavior of the nature in the territory, and then you have something which at the moment it looks, oh, something nice was done, something some improvement is done, and this is the output. But the outcome within 5 years, it might be even damaging. Returning back to the main topic is that obviously institutional deficit on the NUTS 2 and NUTS 3 level in many countries, it's part of the problem for the development of the on the, let's say, certain level of regional structures, if they exist. Slovenia is in the process of regionalization actually from 1993, and still in this period we didn't manage to get the appropriate not only political but at least administrative structure which would be able to develop the regional development policy or regional policies in general, defining the priorities which would be closer to the people. It was very nice to hear that there is a new European initiative within the next financial framework on this level, that we will get closer to the citizens, despite we know that question of democratic deficit is ongoing, but this is not connected to the cohesion policy. And in this perspective, yes, getting closer to the people, but probably due to all the financial restrictions or restrictions regarding the handling the grants, it won't be possible that group of people will say we want something to be done and we want to attract the money for it. It will be still through some mechanism which will have to be behind, which will be monitored, and obviously in this case, in many cases, the real effect, it's not long term. The next thing which is connected to this is really, if we want to achieve the long-term positive effects or long-term development, in many cases we need to understand that regardless how we see the regions on NUTS levels and then combining with it low level and so on, the most important thing is to understand that in all the cases we will have some kind of a polycentric structure of the territories, which means that we can see the countries which will become, or which are the centers. Around those there will be some kind of peripheral countries which will be connected to it and less developed. And if we go to the regional level, even more this can be noticed. And what I was doing a few years ago on the case of Slovenia, it showed exactly this, that regardless how you're trying to develop all the territories as much as possible and in as equal manner as possible, there will be always the center around which we will have the first layer of bit less developed, let's say, municipalities in the case of Slovenia, and then there will be the third level. And on the other side of these approximately three layers, there will be the new setting, not obviously, not perfectly, but you will have this some kind of centers and the peripheries around it. And when certain periphery will be left out from the development possibilities, they will try to get away from their peripheral position, and in the idea that they are able to do better being on their own, which will create the previous periphery a bit more centric compared to the new municipality which might emerge or new region which might emerge. So the main point on this forced development in non-existing identities, returning back to topic, would be that whenever we are trying to ensure the development of the whole territory, the first thing is, as it was mentioned already before, we need to go from bottom up. And from bottom up, obviously, it means not only that we give the people the opportunity to express their wishes at certain point, and then we somehow forget to incorporate them into the bigger picture. But we need to be willing even to spend certain amount of money, and this goes for the state budget, this goes also for the European budget, to spend certain amount of money on the projects which might be considered silly enough, economically silly enough, that we don't believe that they will be working. But give the people the opportunity to redistribute certain amount of money really completely freely with as least as possible of financial control, just expecting certain results. And this will be actually then involving the citizens and giving the opportunities for the project which might have the long-term positive effect based on people seeing that they can really do something. They can participate in, this is bad expression, but in uneducated manner, in the perspective that, okay, we can get the money, we have very little responsibility but the one to carry out what we promised that it will be done, and that we can see how it's going to work. This is gray field of corruption. I'm obviously aware of it, that this is the possibility, the corruption in such situations will most likely arise. But this will give the people to create the small opportunities for themselves that everybody else is missing. What is wrong with this idea? First, participatory budgeting. It's something that exists in many countries, at least at the local level. This is concept which is behind. But what is wrong with it is that all the countries have different national, we don't need to bother with the European, but all the countries have different national regulations, what is possible and how certain things are possible to be done. And if you go not only doing the economic, but more sociological analysis, you'll figure out that in many cases, people will find themselves frustrated that they cannot do anything without encountering long list of rules that they don't understand. Not only how to attract the funding for their ideas, but also in which manner certain things should be done. So here we have the problem of the general overregulation of the things which people desire to do, and this obviously discourages the people. The next or the last element on which I want to put some warning regarding why in many cases the possibilities for development are not working in the way as we want it or as we expect how the development should be done, is that we are not taking into account the question of culture, the question of national cultures, the question of local cultures, or any kind of other cultural context which influences our possibility to do something. Obviously, we can see this through the question of political participation. When people say, I'm not going to vote, very simple, because I cannot the system of ruling. And the same goes when it comes to when people want to participate in some kind of development activities. I don't want to do this because I know that I have no chance to do anything about this. Going a bit to another part of culture, just to illustrate what I mean, is that, for instance, many of our countries have lots of elements of cultural heritage, which are in many cases getting ruined, talking about medieval history or castles, whatever you want, and group of people want to do something about it. And here in between, in Slovakia, you have, for instance, the programs which are well functioning based on so-called public works. People can participate. Government finds the way how to co-finance the possibility of development in this. On the other hand, in Slovenia, the first thing, the National Agency for Protection of Cultural Heritage will say that this is too delicate to do, that people would be allowed to work on this even under the supervision. So shouldn't be done. But at the same time, the responsible agency is not willing, or it's financially and human resource wise limited to do something on its own. So in between, the people who want to do something will just figure out this is not worthy our try. And in this context, obviously, the possibilities for development, not only preservation of cultural monuments, as I mentioned, but also, for instance, in the way how they can organize their business, or how they can organize the improvement of the local environment, they will figure out there is too many rules to follow, too many steps upon which they can stumble and upon which they can not only lose the financing, get even penalized, that they prefer to do very, very little or nothing, or they just find a way how to gain the basic finding, and afterwards they forget about the long-term perspective of the development potential which is hidden behind. So maybe this was much less the presentation, but more like the general comment on what are the limitations for the development to take place, or for development to have long-term outcomes, which would mean the proper use of the funding possibilities, not only for those who ensure the funding at the moment, but also for the future generations. Sure, if there is some additional comments or ideas, I'm happy to discuss them, but for the beginning, that would be it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Uros. Your ideas about citizens' participation is very important and significant for our discussion, especially when our key speaker asked mention citizens' participation and involvement as one of priorities. And as we don't have any questions or comments on our chat line, we would like to ask our colleague, Professor Mindaugas Butkus, to summarize our discussion as our time is running to the end. Please.
Thank you, Vita. So probably I can be here. So, so I would like to summarize our today's discussion. So after the researches and discussions, it could be shortly said that to capture the effects of EU regional support is far more difficult than simple linear models can do that, and that the return of support is not constant and subject to diminishing returns and highly dependent on the area of the investment. Also, conversion and not pure growth should be emphasized during distribution of the EU regional support. Also, it is very important to direct support at the net 3 level to solve issues that arise at this level if we aim to reduce disparities in the EU and not just to induce faster growth. Meaning we need to start to use from bottom to up approach. It is challenging since managerial management of the projects at this regional level could not be so efficient due to the lack of managerial abilities, and the whole cohesion policy should become more flexible but still able to keep a high level of efficiency. It is still necessary to finance projects that have long-term effects, meaning outcomes, but not just the outputs, even if short-term effects are not so huge. And the last one, that institutions are a crucial factor for shaping the return on the EU regional support. So the main target should be projects that firstly boosts institutional quality, and just later projects that requires good institutions to be efficiently implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your summary, and I would like to thank to all participants, including our dear key speakers, Professor Kristina Matuzevičiūtė, Asta Avietė, Program Assistant from European Commission, Professor Uroš Pinterič. Thank you very much for your contribution to this discussion. And in the very end, I would like to express my gratitude as well as the wish to continue our scientific discussions in next events which will be organized by various universities in EU states as well in Siauliai University, and Research Excellence Network is very happy to have you all here and to hear those significant insights on our future, on our European Union states' future. So thank you very much, and I hope that we will have another possibility to discuss other researches in very short term, maybe after 1 month or something like this. So thank you very much for key speakers. Thank you for attendees, and wish you a great day. See you in next events.